people in the corner, and this lady gets up with her friend and walks past, and as she walks past, she did a double take, and she suddenly went, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, it's oh God, it's Harry, oh my God," and walked out. At which point the maitre d' goes quickly to the phone, picks it up and puts it down, and Funnily enough, he turned around and said, from somebody who didn't say anything, he came over and he said, "Mr. Malick, if you'd like to wait at the bar, we'll just get your table ready." And we had the best table there. It was unbelievable.
I walked into a store on Fifth Avenue once when I was over on one of those PBS shoots in New York, and I needed a shirt for a press conference I was about to do. I'd run out of laundry. So I went to Bodorf and Goodman, and they have those receptionists' desks there, And I walked in, there was a woman sitting behind the desk, and she went, "Oh my God, it's him! It's him! It's the thorn in the stone!"
The thorn in the stone.
Do you know, he'd shown Romancing the Stone and the Thornbirds at much the same time, and she got all her wires fabulously crossed.
Thorn in the stone.
Our choices wouldn't be the same.
No.
And that was and we also, in a way, the show, because of what, here was a homegrown product.
So I just want to point out the cookery on the wall. When Merrick's putting the record on, in the background is the sort of knife with which he's killed later in the story. That sort of
I didn't know.
Story detail. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Sorry, I interrupted.
No. What's that?
Lost your thread now, haven't you? America still.
One of David's favourites.
Oh, Tim, you see.
Sorry, sorry.
It'll come back.
We'll get back to it later.
It'll come back.
Talking of actually, while you're thinking of that art story, your death scene when you were stabbed, was that rather uncomfortable to play with, the thing sticking out of your stomach and one-armed and dodgy-eyed?
Not particularly.
No.
That's what we had.
Didn't last very long. Quite quick.
What about the makeup? The makeup was quite intricate, wasn't it, your burn?
Yes, the makeup took 2.5, sort of 3 hours, depending on how easily it went. But it wasn't one of those mega jobs.
No.
I mean, we had a couple of camera tests up in Manchester before we went out to India, and the first one was very, very unsuccessful because it just looked like lumps of Rice Krispies stuck on my face. And the problem with a burn is you've lost skin, and when you're putting makeup on, you're putting stuff on the skin. So, there's a sort of tautology there that's a bit tricky. But Anna Jones, the makeup lady, who was an Anglo-Indian, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Worked on the makeup and came up with this sort of mixture of germaline and latex, which was pretty effective, and pulled my eye down and wrapped my ear up. The only bit of it that was uncomfortable after a day was the ear. It would throb, and when you took it off, the eye would be a bit peculiar. But it wasn't bad, and I didn't have to wear it that much.
But it was early day prosthetics, really, then, wasn't it? I mean, there wasn't really.
Well, they'd done I Claudius, which was the sort of, that was the, that was the big prosthetics number, and we didn't really want to get into that.
No. Obviously, leaps and bounds from 1930s with Boris Karloff spending 8 hours under makeup for the Frankenstein's monster, that sort of thing. But it's still obviously not comfortable.
Can you remember what you're talking about?
Not yet. No. I love this.
Really
I love
fascinating.
this. Oh, it wasn't really. I love this scene. Because I can't. It's torture. Because you just want to go, turn the music off, you asshole. Can't you see what it's doing to it?
That's why I never found what you might call the right sort of girl. It's meant I've often been pretty lonely, keeping to myself.
You think that's about as big a close-up as we've done, and we're 57 minutes in.
That's why our friend...
Bigger on her than me, I notice.
Well, yours is coming. But
the point is, what he's saying is having a profound impact on her, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Wham!
Bang!
What?
I'm only asking whether, after you've had time to think about it...
But I guess this was the British way of proposal, wasn't it? It was very sort of stiff upper lip and...
Well, actually, what's so bizarre about this is that it's completely out of left field and so deeply and profoundly misjudged. and he doesn't understand, of course, because he's out of his depth socially and emotionally.
I hadn't really thought much
And
about getting engaged to anyone.
Working against his own sexual nature, although I don't think he knows it at that point.
No.
There you are. You like the music?
Loads of people. I'd say, what happened in the cell? What happened?
They call it the torture scene.
Yeah. What happened?
I didn't do half enough to you.
And I say, I can't tell you. I can't tell you anything.
So it's too gruesome to show.
Oh, it's traumatised me for life.
This little car. Now, I think we drove up in India,
Are you coming in?
and the interior is reshot in Manchester.
Okay.
This is, isn't it?
Yeah, because we weren't very happy with it.
All right. And thank you for a lovely evening.
Can you remember why you had to? Was it a technical reason for
No, it was the
reshooting?
acting.
Really?
But I'd like you to have the use of this car.
We learnt a bit more about it, you know, by the time we were in Manchester, and it was easy to. I think that was just a flat behind
Yeah.
Susie, you know, and the interior of the car. That's immaterial. I think it was to do with
Anti-British feeling.
being. I think it was more to do with me than her, just being a bit gentler with.
If the Indian National Congress Party votes in support of
So much TV material to film. Would you ever felt rushed into getting a take in, like one take, for example?
On this job?
Yeah.
Never.
No. I was never ever told that the world was running out of stock.
young Indians,
Do you know? They would never. I never felt
crazy old
ever
man
under
sets them on
pressure.
fire with dreams of
And sometimes, you know, the weather didn't behave, and you know, you were under pressure.
That's why I'd like you to have the use of the car. Whenever you want.
You see, I mean, editorially, look at that. You know, that they held that holding that two-shot for as long as you can.
As a policeman.
If you insist.
I don't intend to put you under any obligation.
Well, there's a scene right at the very end of episode 13, I think, when it's your character walking through the streets, and it just holds that image, literally, for about 30 seconds of you walking. And nowadays that would be slashed back.
That would be cut, but you see, that's what we were talking about having time. And by that stage, episode 13, the audience are in his head. So it's not just a long shot, it's giving the audience time to feel, and that's the thing that people don't understand now. I mean, I don't know whether you have a shooting policy, but there are some companies who shoot, the company who shoots spooks. Kudos, good company actually, but they shoot 1 hour 11, 1 hour 15 routinely to cut down to an hour. I don't like that.
No.
I think it's wrong. You know, if I've got an 8-minute scene and it's going to run 8 minutes, I want to be in control of it. You know, and when it goes out and it runs 5 minutes, if I'd known it was going to be 5 minutes, I'd have played it differently.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a lot more editorial work going into pre-production now. In other words, there's a lot more. I mean, if you watch this, there's a producer, there's a director, there's a producer, and then there's a writer. And that's it. And that's the relationship. There's Ken. There's not Ken and then a supervising script editor and another script editor and an episodic. You know,
They're all singing from the same hymn sheet.
yeah, and
They
there seemed to be too much emphasis, I think, in making sure that there's a really great script. Well, the problem is that a script is only something that you read. This is the coalface. This is where you make the work happen. And yes, it's very important to have a script that's good, that you understand what the whole project is. But if the script just becomes about a script that reads well, it doesn't actually allow for this. You can't write a scene like this. What you can do is write the dialogue in there, and especially if you've got the books to research, to go back to as a reference, you can actually come back as actors and say, well, I understand what this scene is about. Here are the words. Now let's make it work.
We used to come in with the book sometimes, drove Christopher mad if we brought the books in. So I've got this rather good line here. And in fact, I had a huge disagreement over what Merrick was wearing in one scene in about episode 8 when he meets Barbie, Peggy Ashcroft's character. It's the only time in the entire series when he's not wearing some kind of uniform, a police uniform, an army uniform, or a DJ. And it was described in the book in great detail. Old shoes that had been cared for, polished within an inch of their life, you know. And because he'd been burnt, he was wearing a jacket and a shirt with a soft silk cravat. And in the text, I was wearing military uniform, And I said, why? And he said, because he's won a DSO and they want to be able to sell. And I said, well, I couldn't tell a DSO from a Mars bar, you know. and Christopher pursed his lips and said, leave it with me. And went away. And he came back 3 days later and he said, I think you're absolutely right. And you know, and we changed what Merrick was wearing in the scene. And he put in a couple of lines about, I hear you've won a military order, a very distinguished barb, he said. And it was a lovely little bit of dialogue that told the audience, you know. And that was very privileged, wasn't it?
Norman Maitland there.
Maitland, yeah.
Fantastic character actor. You mentioned Peggy Ashcroft as well. Obviously, you had a lot of very distinguished actors that came into the show. Eric Porter, for example. Was that quite daunting to work against those sort of people?
No.
Well, it was for me.
But they're not like that. They're so ordinary. Peggy used to say, do you think that's all right? You know, I mean, she's such a wonderful human.
He teach me Hindi once, but I gave it up.
Because his breath smelt of garlic.
But did they put you at ease straight away if you were a little bit nervous on the first day with them?
Well, the lovely thing was I mean, Dame Peggy wasn't at the read-through that Tim talked about, which took 3 days to do, but just at that read-through were actors. And it didn't matter, you know, when you go into a room and a man's walking towards you and he suddenly introduces himself as Eric Porter, you're going, I know who you are.
Eric who?
You know? But just the fact that they've done that, you suddenly think, hang on, I'm being treated as an equal. And so that if you're being treated as an equal, you think, well, I better better be one. I better make sure that I'm, you know, on top of the words. I know what I'm doing.
There now. Did you see that?
Do you find you sort of raise your game a bit if you're against someone as good as that?
They just pull you up, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, you find yourself just, I don't know, it's like playing tennis with someone, you know, playing with somebody better. Chances are you'll play a bit better yourself. Now, this is in Manchester too. This is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yes.
Somebody with a sort of fire hose off camera doing this.
Oh, I wonder. I think maybe the previous shot wasn't in
wasn't.
Manchester, but this is.
Oh.
And down into the temple. I love this.
So this is Manchester now, or is this India again?
Yeah.
No, this is
It's just outside Manchester.
This is what was it called? The Grange, something Grange, just off Manchester. I can't remember the area it's called, but it is.
Some
no,
big round house, is it? Some
I can't remember.
some sort of
now.
garden obelisk or something.
I can't remember.
Gosh, I was lucky. It might have caught us in the middle of nowhere.
It's horrible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Worse mosquitoes and midges than in India.
You know, you've never been inside the
I'm sure there's a horticulturist saying, those look like English oaks to me.
London, and they were going to see the tower. Whoa.
This is my favourite scene.
I was going to say, this is a
Yeah, this is
pivotal
my
scene, isn't
favourite.
it? And you got that great line about, I hate myself for being English.
Well, it's my favourite for lots of reasons. One, because we'd done India, and we'd known each other for such a long time that you could actually sort of relax into it. I think if we did this scene first, I think it would have just been disaster, really.
The building that used to be here, and the McGregor house, and don't you honestly know?
No, honestly.
Bibigar means the house of the women. You must know that at
I was
least.
saying before, obviously by this stage you'd bonded as a unit and as a group of actors, so you could trust each other to play these sort of intimate scenes.
Well then,
Can you spot your first shots on movies? And we can remember them, but I can usually spot them.
Can you?
Oh, Jesus. Going too far there. Stop the acting.
the old priest was dead, and his sons didn't have so many courtesans, I suppose.
See,
Anyway,
that's why I think it's different, because I think in this scene, I think it's behavioural acting.
Yeah, it's completely relaxed.
As opposed to the scene in Matlock, which we actually did before this. You know, the
Was one of your first shots?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one that you said, go and have a look and it's great. And I thought I'd just send them back the money and go home. And that's not and I think that suffers from a performance, whereas this is behavioural.
And it's the ghosts of those young lovers that people think they see. And McGregor too, I shouldn't wonder if he feels at all sorry by now.
How typically Indian.
That's just what I thought.
And I don't believe a word.
Neither did I. I do now, though.
What? Even the ghosts.
So after so many months and almost 2 years of doing it, was it a wrench to leave the character behind?
There must be ghosts.
Yeah, I just wanted it to go on and on. I think there's loads of stories. Yeah.
I was very upset. I kept a car up in Manchester because I was up there for a year almost. And of course, the last time I drove it back to London, I was very, very upset. There was huge withdrawal symptoms.
And the crowds, and the heat, and the bugs.
Because as we were saying, it's
Most of all, myself.
it was a very special job in all sorts of ways. The fact that it was successful is just a sort of exterior bonus, which means that's why we're here today. That's great, but in fact, just the quality of the work was so
I hated India at first.
pleasing to do, wasn't it?
And you know, and you think back to people like the camera boys, you know, John Wood, who was the operator on this, and Lawrence, who was the focus puller. They hadn't done anything as fantastic as this, you know. And
You're not going to chuck me away, as you say.
the Grip, who was just a brilliant Grip. He and Ray Good were great friends. He'd worked on Brideshead as well. I mean, these were extraordinary people who themselves were finding themselves doing, you know, going to the edges of their own talents.
This one.
Do you find it spoils you a little bit if you get a script of such high quality that subsequent scripts aren't quite up to the standard?
We've both done some nice work since, but you do.
They only brutes. They'll all get to
Well, you just have to learn to put things behind you and start again, because otherwise you're bringing judgments which are destructive to the next job. I mean, within a couple of years of this, I did a thing called Life Story with Jeff Goldblum about Crick and Watson. You know, that was a wonderful film, but you know, it was different. I suppose the thing about this is what made us close was that it went on for so long. You know, I mean, I'm still in touch with Wendy, Morgan, and you know, as well. I mean, just loads of people from that group. We share something,
And you get people that meet people, like Ori and Ian Douglas Hamilton. You know, rang me just after you left that message saying that you know they'd met each other at this dinner, and so you sort of find out about people because people just remember it, and so if they bump into anybody to do with it, they tell you.
Wonderful music by George.
I'll be at the Sanctuary again on Tuesday, as usual. If you come round. Otherwise, I don't know when I'll see you or how.
Oh, I'll see you. Bound to see you. Somewhere around. Goodbye, ghost.
So apart from playing Scrabble, how did you relax?
I love your fruity public school.
We used to have, there was one thing which they used to take care of us, which was every Friday night we would have a sort of a party because we were out there, and we'd sort of set up our own disco and our own bar and everything. And it was just a hoot, wasn't it?
At the Shikabahari in Ididapur. Discos.
Yeah.
Ping pong.
Ping pong. And then we decided to do a sort of a show when we were in Mysore just before we left. So
There was no entertainment. They shipped out the odd video, but you couldn't really watch them. We saw Excalibur out there and just pissed ourselves. It just didn't seem. It's not fair to the movie, but you know that sort of entertainment wasn't on. You couldn't buy records. Walkmans were in their infancy. Weren't they? You know, it wasn't like it is now. So we put this evening of sketches on, which was very. It was very naughty, wasn't it?
It was.
I basically played Christopher, ordering
us all
a 15-course meal, or then a 14-course meal from an Indian waiter played by Art. You know? And actually, we got more respect from the crew from that fooling around live than we did for
all the work
this stuff. You know, this great work that we were doing.
I thought I'd try. Sorry.
And also because it was on for so long, and you were at Granada, and they changed the crews, so you know people who worked at Granada and were Granada employees would get a stint on this, and then they'd go off and do something. So you'd be up there after a while, and your prop man would then suddenly be working on the street, you know, and of course you'd be bumping into all those people.
Coronation Street.
Coronation Street. Sorry, Coronation
As opposed to the other.
Looking for trade.
But it was great.
It's so agonising in retrospect, that fated love story, isn't it?
And you're saying in the break that it was like a public school outfit, really, was it? That you were the new boy.
Well, I would know. I was
the fag.
I was the fag. I was Charlie and Tim's fag.
To ask if you'd care to come round to my place.
But no, Tim was head boy, and Charlie was house captain.
And you still are to this day.
Oh God,
Geraldine was head girl.
Geraldine was definitely head girl.
Who's taking you? Mr.
Oh no,
Kumar?
that stays with you. I don't know what it is and why it is, but it's still there.
Well, not exactly. People have started talking.
Oh,
Have you worked together since this? Or? No.
We haven't, have we?
No, we haven't.
No,
We haven't.
I did a play with Geraldine at the National Theatre in the late 80s, Cymbeline with Peter Hall. I haven't worked with Charlie.
You haven't?
No, I don't think so.
I haven't.
Wendy, yes. Nick Farrell, yes.
I mean, we've done. we did Peggy Ashcroft's 80th, didn't we?
Yeah, that was
her
fun.
party.
It sounds
So sort of like getting together for a specific
For
event.
functions and
yeah,
things,
for
yeah,
a function,
sure.
but not.
Tell us about the party.
We got together to do a sketch as the group of Jewel in the Crown people. I mean, one of the weird things that Dame Peg said was that she got more street recognition out of Jewel in the Crown than she'd had in the 60 previous years of her career. So for her 80th, we got together as a group, and we put together a sketch. I think it was Charlie's idea. We did. There's a little yellow idol to the north of Kathmandu, and Merrick was in charge, of course. And every time when it went, there's a little yellow idol to the north. So I'm terribly sorry. I don't think it's yellow. I think it's purple. Oh, all right. There's a little purple idol to the north of Kathmandu. Excuse me, I don't.
I'm sure it was south.
South. Okay, the little purple idol to the south of Kathmandu. We go on like this.
Was it Kathmandu?
But it was just a hoot, wasn't it? That's actually where the black glove
Yes.
started, because Judi Dench, I was working with Judi at the National at the time, and that's where we all wore a little bit of costume that was reminiscent of the character. So I wore a black glove on, did a lot of false arm acting, you know, and that gave Judi the giggles, and that became a game that we still play, this black glove game.
Unless the glove turns up at the least likely places, is that right?
That's the whole point of it, is to get it to her, yes. I think had a great triumph when I got it to Kevin Spacey.
Did you?
Because they were doing, I'd done Iceman with Spacey, and they were doing Shipping News in Alaska, and she had a scene on
New
it.
York? You took it all the way over there?
Yeah.
I can't believe this is still going on.
But Spacey got, Judi had a scene in a loo, and Spacey got underneath the loo and stuck the brush, had the glove on a brush handle. And it's great. Great.
Yes,
fun.
I had you.
Now, where was that?
That was there.
That was in India, wasn't
in
that? That's
India.
the press.
That's
that was
the press.
The Mayapur Zed.
Yes.
That's deaf.
That was a real.
That was Devon. That was
real
my roommate.
press
Yeah,
office,
we
was it?
shared rooms.
Okay.
That's if you
Yeah,
really want
part
to
of the
go.
deal was, you know, we haven't got enough money and we haven't got the hotel space, so you might be doubling up.
And then we'll go on. Then come in for a drink after. Yes. All right. I'll expect you in Atonga about 6 o'clock. Hurry.
But you weren't in any mood to start arguing about doubling up with people. You were happy to.
Didn't even occur to me that you could ask for a single room. I had no idea.
Yes, tomorrow then.
Come into the coffee shop.
Have you got any mementos from your time in India? From
Do you know my greatest regret is my own I don't know why I did this, but when scenes finished, I was so pleased with the fact that the scenes had finished.
You threw the
I
script
used to
away.
take the pages out of the script. And of course then I left them in Udaipur or left them in Mysore. But
I should have kept my script. But I mean, I had 15 of them. You know?
Did you not keep yours?
No.
You just didn't, you know. You didn't.
You know, why should you keep it?
Why would you want it?
Unless you had some image of yourself. I mean, you never look at a script when you finished it.
Well-trained fighting manpower and their armoured fighting vehicles for the
This is what I mean about the English voices. They all talked like that at the time.
Allied counter-offensive against Japan. Japan's first rush carried right through to the threshold of India and Australia, while Hitler hacked his way through from the west.
But Tim, you wrote a book out of India, so obviously India got into your soul.
Yeah, I did a lot of stuff about India afterwards. I did a one-man play called Bengal Lancewicz, based on a book by Francis Yates Brown. In fact, I got George Fenton to write the music for it.
You kept diaries, didn't you?
I kept a diary when I was in India because I thought it would remind me. I read them when I was in Manchester. I knew I was going to be up in Manchester. I thought November in Manchester, I might need a little reminder of Mysore in April. So I kept them and read them, and then I put them together and built up an anthology of writing about literature and of Indian literature, and strung it together with bits from my diary. That's what the book is, Out of India. It's been reprinted a couple of times. It's not around at the moment. Now, this was a very early scene, wasn't it? Was it the first day?
This was my first day with Jim O'Brien.
Yeah.
This was the first.
And didn't they have somebody to come and bless the camera on that first day?
Yep.
Didn't a priest turn up?
Yeah.
Charles Dancer said they were trying to throw a coconut at the screen, at the lens or something, and trying to bless it with a coconut.
Well, Syed Jaffrey, who plays the Nawab, he blesses everything before a take, which is fun. The first time.
There's Bhaskar.
There's Bhaskar. He was sort of like one
of the fixers.
One of the fixers.
And was this a real temple, or was this?
Yes.
Yes, it was. Was that special permission needed for filming there, or not?
It's not the Sri Jagdish, is it, in Udaipur? It's not that big temple. The steps are.
Yeah.
Was it?
Well, I don't know. No, hang on. But it was in Udaipur. And we told, and Bhaskar told me this, what we're drinking here, he said, is pure cow urine. And of course I shared that information with Susie, and she went, "You're joking." I said, no, it is. I said, but it's okay. And she had such kind of like, really, is it? I said, it'll be fine. I'll taste it first. It'll be okay.
Like a 50s movie, isn't it?
So I suppose all the locations have been scouted by the production guys well before you arrived. Yeah.
I think Granada did. They did his follow-on to the quartet, which is Staying On. They did that before as a.
Yes.
Was it right to say they did it as a sort of recce?
I believe so, with Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard.
Yeah, that was about 81.
They did. They shot it in Simla, and I think it was a way of finding out if it was possible to work in India. And having found out that it wasn't, they went ahead anyway.
Can I have one?
If you want. They're Indian.
But the team changed, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, because one of the weird things about that was that it didn't capitalise on the shooting in Simla. I think one of the things about the way we shot in India was that almost every shot we took in India was there to earn its keep. You know, it had to be in India.
What do you mean, put off?
Put me off you. Like everybody else has tried.
Oh, yes, who's that?
Everybody. People like Ronald Merrick. He thinks you're a bad bet, by the way.
Well, he should know, I suppose. Good bet, bad bet. What am I supposed to be, a racehorse? I don't care a damn what Merrick thinks of me.
Well, I don't see why you should. After all, you've never even met him.
I should say I've met him,
Have you?
if that's what you call it.
How?
When I was drunk and he picked me up at the sanctuary.
Picked you up? That was Ronald. Ronald himself, when
So
you
this
were
was
arrested.
Joe O'Brien directed this episode.
Yeah.
They weren't obviously shot in sequence, so I mean there must have been bits done all over the
Oh,
place.
you could have been working with Jim in the morning, or Christopher in the morning, and Jim in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just if you're on a location, that's the location, and if that location appears in Jim's episodes, you know, like with with the Sanctuary, some of that stuff was episode 1, episode 2. You just went there.
I started with my last scene, but 2, I think, from episode 14. One of the riding sequences.
Yeah.
Picked me up. Then they took me in for questioning.
They shipped me out a week early, so I had a chance to get to know the horse and ride around a bit. It was wonderful.
This is the horse that was a bit would ride anywhere.
This was the horse, yes. They said when I first got on this horse, they said, "Oh, he's a wonderful horse. He will ride until you're off his back." We lit a wall of fire this Christmas. He was the only horse in the stable to go straight through it. It's enormous, great race. They're extraordinary Indian thoroughbreds. They have little pointy ears, and when they're contented, the ears join in the middle and face it. As soon as they become restless, one ear or both will just start roaming round like independent eyes. It's extraordinary. This horse was a phenomenal creature. His name was Chetak, and it was named after a famous Mewari horse who'd had his legs chopped off in a battle and saved his captain by swimming across the river with him. Chetak, and he was a bit like that.
Was it the Maharaja's younger brother that used to run that sort of...
Narendra.
Yeah.
He ran the hotel out at Pratap where the stables were, yeah. Yeah, he didn't like living in the palace. You know, the Lake Palace that you see, as many of the palaces in India have been turned into hotels. The palace in the middle of the lake at Udaipur was the summer palace of the Maharanas of Udaipur, and Narendra was brought up there as a child. He just hated what had happened to it, so he lived not even in the city palace, but in a little hotel of his own outside the town. We got him to dinner one evening. And
You did?
He came to dinner at the Lake Palace one evening, very much against his will. And the chef, of course, came out and namaste to him and saluted him and, came to greet his prince, It was extraordinary. Look at those trousers. What am I doing?
Can I get you the other half?
I'll buy you one.
Oh, I'm still on duty, as it happens. I spent most of the day with the Deputy Commissioner and Brigadier Reed. We heard this afternoon the Congress Committee voted in favour of Gandhi's resolution. The little man in the dhoti has called on his followers to do or die.
I wonder if all this politics about Quit India campaign and Gandhi, I wonder what it means to people now. I don't think they really have, like our editor, I don't think they have the framework of understanding of those 300 years of colonial rule in which to perceive what was going on here.
Together at the club if things get rough. So,
They always say you should learn from the past, but I don't think anybody ever does, do they? It's just the same old misunderstandings and prejudices.
One of the things we know for sure doesn't work is people sitting down with a map and dividing the place up. And of course, 4 or 5 years after that, we were creating East Pakistan and West Pakistan, Bangladesh, and it's probably what'll happen in the Middle East at some
Out the
point.
back sheesh, can you?
yes, that's true.
But hopefully people watching this as a piece of drama would also appreciate that it did actually happen, and this is addressing issues. And
I wonder, we were talking earlier about the impact in America, and I suspect that they probably don't. They probably see it as a bit of costume drama and don't realise that it's an essential piece of history. I mean, one of the books that I quoted in my own book is a book by Geoffrey Morehouse about India Britannica, it's called. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. And he said there's never been a colonial relationship like the relationship between England and India 300 years, and it's got to be more than the ruler and the ruled, the sort of things that I say to you in the so-called torture scene. It's got to be more than that. There was a sort of empathy. Maybe the class system and the caste system meant that we were well matched. I think we also shared a sense of humour, too, didn't you? I think the British were equitable rulers. You know, they did an extraordinary job there.
She comes on Tuesdays, as a rule.
So it is I you have called to see. Perhaps to talk?
Yes. I've been drinking.
I found it a huge learning curve in terms of just learning about that history. When I was a kid, I used to live next door to Fenner Brockway's sister, Labour MP, and she'd been a missionary in Madras. She founded the Ladies' College in Madras. And she'd shown me pictures of India and talked about the temple prostitutes, and I was only 12. I was
wide-eyed amazement,
blushing, as I recall. and I sort of put it away, but I hadn't understood what she was talking about the context. And I've got a huge library of books about India now that I collected during that time. Had you been out to India before?
No.
It was your first time too, wasn't it?
That's why you're such a perfect choice, I suppose, for this. As we go back to the start of this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when my father came here, we all arrived. You know, I was the youngest of 5. I came when I was 3. My eldest brother was probably 9 at the time. And as far as my father was concerned, you know, we were going to be brought up, and the worst thing that happened was his fears that we would all turn into little Englishmen, you know, sound like Englishmen and everything. And it's, you know, the idea is that what he feared is actually what everybody really wants, which is that we want to live in a hybrid society, because that is the society we have.
I did see you. One afternoon on the Maidan. I'd gone there to report a cricket match for the Gazette.
Again, this scene illustrates that with the Indians clapping a good cricket shot, but still behind the barricades there, and not allowed to actually join in with it.
Just the same. Colin! And then he saw me. And didn't see me. In my Bapu clothes, under my topi, he didn't realise there was one black face he should remember. Well, didn't you know? We all look alike.
I guess the show's been broadcast around the world, hasn't it? Several times.
I think so, yes. Apparently the show, they have sort of weekends in America, Jewel in the Crown weekends, where people sit down and watch it.
Come on, I said, come on. Look here, you fellows, this is Mr.
I think there were 2 places where it wasn't successful. Russia.
Really?
And France.
Okay.
France is one of the few places in the world where I go where I'm not recognised from Jewel in the Crown.
Yeah.
Everywhere else I've been, you know, it's quite bizarre.
An Indian, incapable of being anything except an Indian. Something.
This is extraordinary. I mean, you've worked in Australia as well, but you know, you'll be in the back of somewhere, and suddenly come out. You know, you're in some bar out in the bush somewhere in Australia, and someone goes, "Ah, nice show, mate. That Jewel, bloody nice bit of telly, that."
This is so weird. Incredible. In Spain once, I was walking out and this guy said, El Diablo, El Diablo.
They carried me almost to my door because they were too ashamed and didn't want to see my aunt.
Mrs. Sen Gupta.
This was the scene that I was telling you about that Tim said when he'd seen the rushes. He said, it's great, you'll really like it, go and have a look.
But you were foolish.
And I would often look at it and come out and going, I can't do it. They found out. They found out so quick.
God, watching rushes is the worst, isn't it?
Oh,
really.
Well, if you don't know what you're doing, you know, it never occurred to me that actually they'd cut this with her. I thought they were going to show it all on me.
All on you.
You know?
Who is this? Pandit Baba.
So this was your, second day? Or quite an early point?
An early scene.
It was an early scene which we actually did out in India.
Ah, that I will. Because I hate this whole damn stinking country. The people who live in it.
It's a fantastic scene, though. So you were wrong.
No, thank you.
You told him that? Just so?
And she was marvellous. She's a wonderful foil. Such a human being.
Well, forgive? He wants to be so British. Just doing his job. When we parted, he shook hands. Goodbye, Kumar. Keep out of trouble. And I have. Honestly, sister.
Do you think 21 years on that a producer would come along and try and do something on this grand scale again in television or not?
Well, I'd like to think it is possible, given that, we can shoot on digital cameras now and that we can do things on digital.
I was going to say, I think that the new digital age, when it's been accepted, but there was such a snobbery about film and video then, wasn't there?
But I think that'll make... It's down to the economy of it all, really, whereas, now you can say, OK, we can shoot digitally, we can put the film effects in afterwards and all the rest of it. It's just somebody saying, is there an audience out there that will commit 16 weeks of their lives? And in those days, I don't think they actually even asked whether people would commit 16 weeks. It was just assumed that, well, we're going to put it out for 16 weeks, you watch it or don't.
The history of television was that if it was good, people did watch it.
And also bear in mind that this came at a time when there was very little pre-publicity for it. There was very little publicity at the time, other than to do with that. There wasn't Closer magazine. You didn't see, we weren't on the cover of Heat magazine, and we didn't have to go and do all these celebrity shows and things.
Well, the BBC wouldn't have us on.
Oh, really?
Because it was a Granada show.
And you just did a few interviews, but you relied on the piece itself.
Represent the vast majority of India's millions. Every effort was made to prevent bloodshed.
But I think you're right, there's a whole culture now where, particularly in soap operas, they want to give away the plots a year in advance, don't they? Which is crazy, really.
I mean, it would never have occurred to me in any of the interviews that I did when people would say, so what happens? My answer was always, well, watch and see. Whereas now it's, oh, well, you see what happens is that, and then, it's that lovely story, that lovely moment in Shakespeare in Love, which, Tom Stoppard, where the nurse, the guy playing the nurse, is in that scene. He says, well, it's a story about this nurse. Romeo and Juliet don't exist, really. Whereas that's the difference.
I know what I'd do if I got my hands on them. Anyone who trusts an Indian is a bloody fool, if you ask me. Anyway, mate.
Sally Ann Webster there, wasn't it?
And we all cared. That's what I always remember about the job, is that people cared. They cared about each other, and they cared about, is it working for you? Is this scene working? And if it's not, how can we get it right? And there didn't seem to be this idea that, look, we've been here 10 minutes now and we haven't turned over yet.
This is a wonderful scene.
So there were no egos at play then?
There's nothing I could do.
No.
Nothing.
There's the famous photo, the picture. One of the things Barbie says about that picture, she says, I love the way the artists got everything in. Princes, Indians, children, palm trees. There's Miss Crane, poor Miss Crane.
Whose love will never die. Our earthly friends may fail us.
So you mentioned about being in Australia. Are you still known and recognised for this programme, even 21 years on?
Well, but it's the one that people will talk about the most. It is the one that if you're talking about anything, this is the one that most people will refer back to. Even if there's people that have seen you do True Lies or Holby City or whatever it is, if they've seen this is what they want to talk about. It's extraordinary.
In the late 80s, 90s, I had a theatre company, and I was touring in 91, at which time I was doing a television series called The Chief, in which I was playing a chief constable, and I was on a sort of kids' chat show on the radio, publicising it, and the kids were being asked to phone in and say, what was the television show that first brought this actor to public recognition? And because they were kids, they were all saying The Chief.
Yes.
And it was about 3/4 of an hour before somebody older rang and said, I have to put you all out of your misery. It was the jewel in the crown. But I mean, everywhere else in the world, it's that one. There are a few television shows that have had international impact. Like this, I suppose Brideshead is the other single one.
Well, this is the one that got, has always been the one that gets me the jobs.
Is it?
Yeah, or the one that everybody talks about. Even on, when you're working on Holby, or whether you're even doing things like True Lies, where you're suddenly there and suddenly there's a prop man comes up or somebody and says, "Hey, I saw that jewel." That was brilliant.
It wasn't just good dramas, it was about something. It was about our country and our history, and it really got into the psyche and the culture.
They usually think the jewel is the one the prince is offering. But I tell them, no. The jewel is India, you see.
Should mention Janet Henfrey there as well.
Yeah. Saw her last night at Pina Bausch.
You mustn't talk too much. You'll get tired.
About a year later, I think she was playing that great school teacher in the Dennis Potter Singing Detective. And she was superb in that as a school teacher.
It was a sort of promise. A promise.
Tells you again about that period of time, doesn't it? The sort of quality of work that was going on.
Edge of Darkness.
Edge of Darkness. Great series.
Please rest.
I mean, I hope that the future is about that there are executives out there involved in broadcasting who can sort of say, look, actually, we don't have to underestimate the intelligence of the public. We can actually honour the fact that most of them are. Most executives, I find them really odd when they talk about the public, because you actually want them to say, well, who are the public? The public's me, you, and everybody else, So why should we do things that we wouldn't want to watch?
Well, I mean, the writer should think that the audience out there is as intelligent as he or she is, surely, so you can write a decent
I think, to be
script.
honest, one of the things that's gone wrong with drama on television now is that too much of it is done by democracy. In these days, this programme was set up and a group of people were chosen to go away and make it, and they were allowed to make it. There's too much interference at a high level now from people who really don't know what it is that makes a good programme. And if you show a programme to anybody, they'll all have their own view about what should be done to it. But, if you've chosen a group of people to make the programme, let them do it.
I mean, when you talk about people like Christopher Morahan, this is a man, I mean, he'd forgotten what I knew when I met him about acting or whatever it was, but this was a man who knew exactly about the logistics of how to shoot. The schedule was done not because we need to get 2.5 minutes, we need to get these things out. They were shot because the understanding was, well, this one's going to take this, I want a tracking shot on this, I want to do this on this, so okay, well, there, you've got the morning to shoot it in.
Oh, I shall be all right, even if it rains. Goodbye, sister.
If I had a big scene to play with which was being directed by Chris, I would nearly always try and find a time when I could sit and talk to Jim about it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to get, his input and feel about, where we were, and vice versa. You were lucky to have these people around to help you use them. Dangerous, Daphne.
Boo hiss, boo hiss.
That wasn't me. That was Bob Crichton. That was the night I was ill, and they dressed the chippy up in my frock and sent it in.
What was your illness? Was it something you ate? Or
tummy. Talking to God on the telephone. The Hindu two-step. It's a terrible thing. Oh, man. Was I sick?
I expect you've come to see Daphne, but she's at the club.
Yes, that's what they said at the hospital. But she isn't there.
Oh, isn't she?
Well, then I want...
You know, we had to take out sterilisation tablets. There wasn't bottled water as such, was there? There was no, you know.
Well, Eric Porter got really ill in Udaipur because he had some of the water that they left in the flask by your bed, which is supposed to be purified water, and they found the boys were filling these flasks from the tap and putting the top on. So, of course, it was brewing up into a really powerful disease. It's awful.
Some of the people you know are locked up.
I mean, it took 2 days to book a phone call to get home.
Yeah, you just couldn't, you couldn't ring from Udaipur at all. So when we flew through Bombay to get down to Mysore, there was a queue for the telephones, and Granada were very good about that. And they gave us time to ring home and speak home. But you know what it's like, 5 minutes on the phone after you haven't spoken to your family for 2 months. You're going to get on your mind.
No faxes. A letter would take a week.
So it really was isolation, just the unit, and that was it.
And holding that shot.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And again, very brave to do it into a 2-hour rather than just the first episodes to really establish the series. Well, Tim and Art, that's been a pleasure.
Listen to the way the music changes from English to Indian. Starts with... It's
brilliant.
It was so thought out. Thank you.
Oh, it's been fantastic.
Thank you very much. It's been brilliant.
It's good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, we should do this more often.
We do the whole series, shall we?
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
And by about episode 7, we'll stop being rude about it. Look at what he's doing. What does he think he's up to?
What did Charlie think he was doing in that tin?
He now plays a small part in the stuff in Simla. Dirty Dan.
Leslie Grantham, he does.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was killed last night. We're going to date this now.
Well, again.
Again.